As Laura mentioned, I'm Brady Forrest. I spoke earlier today about how I started Ignite, which I did back in December of 2006 with my friend Bree Pettis. And we just wanted a place and an event for geeks to get together to share ideas over beer. We wanted something casual where friends could share their ideas, their passions, and instead of doing it at like a conference where you have to hear an hour-long talk, it'd be 5 minutes. In that 120-person room, we had 200 people show up, 25 speakers, and each speaker was held together by a common thread. They had just 5 minutes on stage, 15 seconds a slide, 20 slides. And from that, it has gone around the world. And with us today, we have 6 great speakers, and then myself that will be kicking it off. And so without further ado, I'll get to my talk. And earlier today, someone asked me, do you go to Burning Man by any chance? Just looking at how I was dressed. And I said, well, yes, I do. And I go for 2 reasons. I go because of the art and the community. See, Burning Man is it's an amazing event that happens every year in the desert. And I just came back from it a couple of weeks ago. And I come back inspired and full of friendship. Now, several years ago, back in 2009, 80 of my friends got together and built a 15 by 15 by 15 Rubik's Cube. The remote controls for the X, Y, and Z axis were screaming distance apart. And so this 35-foot tall Rubik's Cube would light up the night. And the first person to solve it took 5 hours. And he went hoarse from yelling commands to his kind of disciples. Later on, now that it's in museums around the world, it takes more like a half an hour. And at the end of the week, these friends had bonded, and not in the way that they bond in Seattle where they're from, by going to brunch and discussing like, where's the best Bloody Mary, but by building this amazing art project, by working shifts together, by making sure their tents were set up. And it's the type of art that can only happen at Burning Man. Now this is a map of Burning Man. The man is actually in the middle, and it's kind of like a clock. And so it goes from 2 to 10, and then up top is where the art is. And that's the size of Burning Man compared to the city of San Francisco. And this is what Burning Man looks like from a plane. I actually went up in a plane and took some shots. It is this kind of huge city that appears out of nowhere in the middle of a desert flat. Now, this is a project that I worked on a couple of years ago, the Heart Phoenix bus. It was a London touring bus that now is basically a mobile dance club. And although it looks very beautiful and the sound is actually quite amazing, it took a lot of work to get there. We spent several days coordinating cranes, many weekends sitting on Treasure Island outside of San Francisco, fabricating it, stretching fabric, getting metal parts ordered, and all for this one event. And it's in part because Burning Man is the only place where people can build art like this at scale, without permits, without worrying about how it'll affect a city long term, because Burning Man is only there for a week. It's temporal art. And so when you see a piece, you know that people have been working on it. They've been building their friendships and their communities around it, and they're bringing it just to the desert to destroy it. And that Trojan horse was shot down by an arrow. Now, I also like Burning Man because it's kind of a testbed city. Because it's only there for a week, people explore with it a lot. And a lot of the services that are out there now began as just people in the city wanting to volunteer. In particular, emergency services. There's now a full fire department, ER room, medevac, but those services began as just volunteer firefighters having fire camp. The same is said about the transportation. So there are art cars that are allowed to ride in the desert, and they form the transportation system because otherwise the city is so huge, and at night you don't necessarily feel like riding your bike. And as you'll see in this map, this handy map of the art, it's a little confusing sometimes to find different art projects. So it's handy to have these kind of roving cats and huge birds, and I remember my first night I saw like a huge praying mantis, and there's an amazing octopus fire car. And of course, there are also geeks there. And my friend here was doing Street View for Burning Man, and you can actually still find Burning Man Street View and like coast along some of the streets just as you would with Google. But you have to ask, where else could these resources be spent? Is it wasted to just go to Burning Man and build art like the Temple of Shame that I worked on in 2009 and burn it down? Well, the Rubik's Cube ended up back in the Seattle Art Museum of Science, or Seattle Museum of Science, and there's currently a model that's showing in a New Jersey museum across the lake from New York. And I think it's important to get out there, to build art, to make community, to geek out, to blow shit up, and bring it back. So I recommend that you go. You should go despite the desert, despite the tickets, and have fun, and bring it back to your cities. Thank you very much. I'm Brady Forrest.